The only true currency in this bankrupt world is what you share with someone else when you're uncool.
These are my favorite new metal albums of October 2024, and we're starting with Undeath with More Insane. I've continued to be vocal about my indifference towards a lot of these new OSDM bands, and I must have been the only one on the planet who didn't much care for It's Time to Rise from the Grave.
What's wrong with you?
But the new follow-up from this New York band absolutely knocked my socks off with its sheer speed and very tight, to the point, and frankly enthralling songwriting. Not to mention the riffs are a perfect combination of Cannibal Corpse intensity with the melodic hooks of At the Gates and Dismember. From highly infectious growl-along vocal moments to the pretty epic harmonized riffing and soloing, this album's brisk 34-minute runtime is packed to the gills with only the best. And while it's not particularly innovative, it's so high on my other scales that it might just end up being a top pick for the year. Then we have 1349 with The Wolf and the King. The 8th album from this Oslo band formed in 1997, and they remain dedicated to sticking to the grim sounds of the early days. The grumbly guitar tone brings notes of both 90s Satyricon, Immortal, and Inquisition, and the riffs, in spite of their nihilistic, warlike energy, can be quite infectious alongside the raw pounding of the drums. Plenty of memorable tracks on display here, and with just 8, it ends up being a pretty focused slice of villainy. Check out The Vessel and the Storm and Obscura for some of the better trad black metal this year. Then we have Enforced with A Leap into the Dark. Ceaseless shadows, countless corridors, chasms of the mind. Hot on the heels of last year's War Remains, the Virginia thrash metal band is back with a 6-song EP encore with that same dark rebellious energy. If you've heard these guys before, there's really not much more to be said, and in this case, that's a compliment. 20 minutes of fun crossover energy that should more than appeal to fans of Power Trip, Iron Reagan, and Municipal Waste, and cap it off with 2 covers in English Dogs The Chase Is On and Obituary's Deadly Intentions. Then we have Gigan with Anomalous, Abstractigate, Infinitessimus. I'm a huge fan of this Chicago band, previously named in my most underrated metal band series. This is their 5th album, and I could scarcely believe it's been 7 years already since the last one. And while it takes a bit to get started, the opening track almost seems like a test designated to weed out the normies before we get to the real ragers. Their sound is one I would describe to newcomers as psychedelic technical death metal, or better yet, Gorguts on acid. I'll admit I was a little lukewarm on the last album, but this one takes me back to the elements of quasi-hallucinogenic and multi-dimensional fractal sorcery that made me fall in love with them to begin with. Then we have Oranssi Pazuzu with Muuntautuj. Album number 6 from this Finnish psychedelic black metal band, and one I found myself describing as Trent Reznor soundtrack meets Blut aus Nord. Industrial black metal and even some light dubstep, the classic understated kind, not the Skrillex kind. Its vibes, sometimes chill and groovy, others eerie and outright horrifying. I'm particularly fond of the title track and the darkly infectious Autopsy, which sounds like it could easily double as a horrorcore backing track. Creepy yet thoughtful and contemplative, it's the thinking man's Halloween soundtrack. Then we have Valletta with Summer. Getting major Mantar vibes on this gnarly debut, though it's actually made up of current and former members of Moynach, Lord Almighty, Barichi, and of all things Hopesfall and Between the Buried and Me. Great similar mix of styles here of blackened vocals with sludge and hard rock that's sure to get your head bobbing and foot tapping on tracks like Criminal and Ill Blood. It's like nihilistic 90s alternative crossbred with even darker influences and your mom. And all joking aside, though, the tongue-in-cheek juxtaposition of the album title with the artwork says it all. These guys are not here for a beach party. Then we have Disarray with Religious Disease. It's been a bit of a slower year for thrash in my opinion, but there have been some gems, and this Swedish album is definitely one of them. With the ferocious vocals and mixture of all-out full-speed ragers and more mid-paced head bobbers, I'm getting vibes for Dark Angel, Toxic Holocaust, and especially, again, Power Trip. Forbidden of Speech will absolutely blow your hair back and scalp you in the process as an opener, as will Bound to Kill and Realize You're Already Dead. And yes, of course, more great gang vocals to scream along to with your horns in the air. Then we have Schammasch with the Maldoror Chants, Old Ocean. Big fan of this Swiss avant-garde black metal band's work, and they continue to take the genre in a more explorative and introspective direction with this 5th LP. I actually can't believe it's already been 5 years since Hearts of No Light, but the time away has definitely been worth it, as this scratches much the same itch that their epic triple album Triangle did for me back in 2016. The more I listen to, the more I realize these guys may be the reason why I find bands like Gaia to feel so much more one-dimensional in comparison. They just do so much more with their compositions while crafting a similar energy. Songs ebb and flow into interesting directions, making longer tracks feel far more engaging by comparison. I'd actually compare some of the songwriting and guitar work of this album more with Tool, just translated into a darker direction. Then we have Better Lovers with Highly Irresponsible. It's finally here, the much anticipated debut full length from this Frankenstein left from the ashes of two of my favorite bands, Every Time I Die and the Dillinger Escape Plan. And I am happy to say that the outcome is a very solid one. It's hard to not see this as most reminiscent of the latter band with Greg's usual chaotic vocals, but there are also plenty of those southern fried E-tid riffs as well as a few more brooding tracks akin to Greg's solo work. Tons of fun, fast-paced mathcore technicality that I hope will act as a gateway to new fans of both bands' impeccable discographies, and let's not forget the addition of Fit for an Autopsy's Will Putney as well. As for who wins round one in terms of this versus Keith's Many Eyes last month, this is the clear victor, but in the end I'd like to see both succeed on their own merits. Then we have The Spirit with Songs Against Humanity. As we lost our way. The fourth album from this German melodic black metal band I've been enjoying since their 2017 debut. Another group of hundreds with clear roots in dissection, but I don't know what it is, but it's their particular execution that just hits for me. It's just a super tight packaging of captivating riffs, malevolent vocals, and great use of dynamics. If any of that sounds good to you, and if you're also into more modern groups like Uwata and Black Braid, this should be right up your alley. Next up is Escuela Grind with Dreams on Algorithms. Another one hot on the heels of an EP just a few months ago, this Massachusetts grind band delivers another no-nonsense full-length that sounds as pissed off as ever. Great mix of high-speed pummelers like DOA with head bob-inducing groovers like Constant Passenger, Animus Multiform, and Scorpion. There are also some occasional surprises too, namely the mostly clean vocal-focused Turbulence. Nothing fancy, just raw and wretched stuff that I'm sure will cause quite a few mosh pit injuries. We also have Immortal Bird with Sin Querencia. Love this Chicago band's miserable, dissonant take on metal since 2013's Acrasia EP. The closest thing I could probably compare their sound to is Cobalt, but with this new record I hear them expanding their sound in a number of different directions. Opener Bioluminescent Toxins, for one, takes an interesting detour into clean vocals that reminds me of jazz metal group Dreadnought. Meanwhile, Ocean Endless gets downright grindy, while Synthetic Alliances has a few riffs straight out of a Dillinger Escape Plan album. More generally, I also hear some potential connections to the likes of Krallis, while Ray's harsh vocals give me some early Angela Gossow energy. Then we have Chat Pile with Cool World. This Oklahoma City noise rock and metal band has been picking up steam since their critically lauded album God's Country in 2022, and I think that they've only gotten better with this sophomore follow-up. Many of the same comparison points remain, like Daughters, Ken Mode, and Swans, but I'd argue that on occasion tracks like Camcorder and Funny Man have guitar and bass work reminiscent of early Korn. Regardless, the results are always haunting in this very dreamlike, dissociated way, at times also descending into full-on madness and violent nightmares with this incredible sense of desperation in the vocals. And in that way, it also makes the perfect alternate soundtrack to the Silent Hill 2 remake, which you can count as a major sub-recommendation from this month from someone who considers the original to be a personal favorite since 2001.
Bitch, pravda.
Next up is Fit for an Autopsy with The Nothing That Is. Damn, Will Putney, did you have to go this hard twice in 1 month? I swear this band just keeps getting better and better with each album, and some of the riffs on here rival Sixth and Periphery in both catchiness and technicality. And with the approach to clean vocals, I'd also call this a bit of a spiritual successor to Architect's album Lost Forever, Lost Together, with a deathcore twist, far more so than any of their most recent albums, too. So many infectious grooves, hypnotic atmospheres, and headbang-worthy moments, every track could be a single. Then we have Kilpréz with a Dirge for Dregs. The return of this Swedish mathcore project that, to be fully transparent, I've been on friendly speaking terms with for a few years now and sent me some sick merch for free that you'll probably be seeing in future videos. But I promise you, the only reason I would even accept such an offer is because I already love and believe in their music. If you love the likes of Psyopus, The Number 12 Looks Like You, and the Tony Danza Tap Dance Experience, you need to get in here. It's a chaotic cauldron of pure chaos filled with tentacles and spewing bodily fluids. It's the sonic equivalent of the last 10 minutes of The Substance. So much insane finger-snapping guitar work, bizarre vocals alongside surprise bursts of saxophone, and it's probably their best album yet. Then there's Vomit Forth with Terrified of God. A truly bludgeoning mix of death metal, grind, and even a touch of hardcore. Their stated goal, in their own words, was to make the most unsettling, brutal, and scary death metal record of all time, and while maybe those last three words are a bit of a stretch, the rest of it is a slam dunk. The snare tone is absolutely battering, and some of these vocals, like on Poison Child and Fixation on The Narrative, are delightfully disgusting. With tracks largely hovering around 2 minutes for a total runtime of just 28, you'll scarcely have time to catch your breath, especially as they forcefully beat it out of you. Then there's Vicious Blade with Relentless Force. I totally would have included this Pittsburgh black and thrash band on the Best of September list, but since I was late to hear it and accidentally put 2 October albums on that list, I'll just include it here. Formed by Clarissa Bedini of Castrator, this is just the type of fast and aggressive music I crave in the genre, alongside the likes of Midnight and Hellripper. Throw in Holy Moses for good measure. Love the occasional vocal variation in addition to the Hellfire guitars and general putrid aesthetic. High energy stuff that actually leaves me wanting more rather than having 5+ minute songs that overstay their welcome. Almost forgot to include Warm Gadget with Sorrows. There is far too little industrial music floating around these days, considering just how big it was growing up in the 90s and early 2000s, so thank God for bands like Warm Gadget keeping that old flame alive. That opening riff of The Masses is pure 90s cool soundtrack worthy, and we get a rad appearance from Paige Hamilton of Helmet on Debutante as well. I'd often compare their more guitar-driven sound to kind of a cross between later Ministry and Stabbing Westward, but with even more of my favorite underground projects in tow like Dread Risks and Lament Cityscape. And honestly, the more throbbing electronic remixes managed to make some of my favorites here as well. Before we get to my favorite metal album of October, just a reminder to share your own favorites in the comments and hit the like button. It really helps me out in the algorithm. And also for you longtime viewers out there, consider buying some Metal Trenches merch with some sick artwork from the man behind Zombie Shark. But that said, my favorite metal album of October 2024 goes to Blood Incantation with Absolute Elsewhere. The Colorado death metal band back again with possibly their most forward-thinking record to date in a discography dedicated to innovation. 2 lengthy compositions here, but broken into 6 tracks with incredible pacing and with something new to offer every minute or so. Getting some Opeth vibes with the acoustic and synth elements, the Message Tablet 2 gets very Pink Floyd, and very cool collab with Tangerine Dream as well.
They come from outer space.
Why not?
I'd also say that it ends on a kind of early Ulver Bergtat sounding note. Such a wonderful, continuous peeling back and revealing of new layers that never gets boring for a second and just gets more interesting with each subsequent listen. Y'all check out this playlist for more of my favorite metal albums of 2024 by month, or this video for your personal YouTube recommendation. But that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.